Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the BusPlanner ongoing exclusive webinar series for May of 2025. Today, we're going to talk to you about fall student transportation planning with BusPlanner. Joining me today is Mr. Scott Denton. Scott is a retired transportation leader in the industry, has been for over 30 years as a transportation director for 24, 25 years, and then an assistant superintendent of operations as well. Wealth of knowledge. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Binford Sloan. I've also been in the industry for 30 years now, and most of that time has been as a transportation director, and also, have spent the last 6 years working here with BusPlanner as a solutions consultant and helping people that are out there. So, Scott, as always, welcome back to join us here on this seminar today. It's great to have you here with us.
Hey, what a pleasure, Benford, to be able to share time with people and hopefully a little bit of knowledge we have may help somebody out there. So that's what we're hoping for, and just glad to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Anytime. And for those of you out there that are current BusPlanner customers, as always, thank you. Thank you from the bottom of our heart for having the trust and the confidence in us to be your partner in your school district. It means so much to us as we're able to share things with you and have been now for over 40 years. And for those of you that are out there that are new, considering options for in the future, we do hope that you gain some knowledge today, what we're going to help you with, and want to continue to talk and explore more with BusPlanner. So today, Scott, we've got a few things we wanted to talk to everyone about. Because school years are winding down. Can you believe it? It just seems like we had Christmas last week, and here we
It
are
really does.
coming up towards the end of May. We've got some districts that are going to be, dismissing, the next day or two, the next week, and this is going to continue for the next, 3 weeks now, depending on what region you're in, in Canada or the U.S. So it's a lot going on. But we do want to talk about stakeholder communication for fall planning, right? Working through that, we want to talk through the importance of having those face-to-face meetings, working through those tips for summer programs that are going to be starting up, here very quickly, and then the fall regular school startup that's just right literally around the corner. And we'll wrap it up with some Q&A. Stakeholder communications. This is a big piece, is it not, Scott? So much involved here.
Benford, it seems like every time we do a webinar, we talk about communications, but the reason behind that is so critical to the
Hmm.
outcome of how you provide your transportation. And I think the first thing
Hmm.
that comes to mind for me in the communications piece is the importance of having those meetings and that relationship with your data managers. You cannot have the right data available unless your data managers do a good job with that. And that's, of course, for those districts that get imports on a regular basis. There may be some districts that are out there that they have parents calling them directly and they're controlling their own data flow. Either way, either your internal staff and or your school staff, having those folks with a focus on accuracy and making sure that addresses are accurate and they're doing a good job of keeping things up to date. That's really just you can't put a price tag on that. How important it is to have that done. And I think not only having there are usually meetings of the data managers, a couple times a year, and we always used to try to attend those, and we would present at those meetings and talk about what we needed from those folks. But it also extends to a personal relationship with those people as well, because
Hmm.
everybody knows you've got some data managers that are going to be fantastic, and you've got some that may present some challenges for you. And so the more that you cultivate those relationships, the more you can sort of manage those challenges that you may have. And it may extend beyond the data manager to the principal as well, because that principal obviously is that personal supervisor, and having a good relationship with that principal can obviously help you bridge some of those challenges sometimes with those data managers. But it is just the most critical thing to have good high quality data when you're trying to make sure kids are placed on buses and that they're going to be picked up by the buses.
Oh yeah, most definitely. I recall years ago. I'm not going to tell my age by this story, but we used to route the buses by push pins and yarn on a big wall map, right? And all you needed was basically the student's name, where they lived, and the school they went to. You're talking about student data. There's so many more pieces that are now available, right? That go into this. And you are absolutely spot on when you talk about, the having to have that data quality. Okay, because if you think about it, this is the foundation of your transportation routing home, right? And if you don't get this piece correct, you can forget everything else.
That's right.
And and I tell people, and I see this all the time, they think they've had a student import plan that's worked for them for the last 2, 3, 5, 10 years, and they think they've got everything. And I'm like, no, you don't, because so much has changed in the industry. So much has changed in public education, charter school transportation, private school, over the years, the technology that's there. You need to revisit this student data, on an annual basis at a minimum, and look at what's coming out and see how you can bring that into your system to help, right?
Benford, one of the other things that we didn't mention right out of the gate was the importance of having a good relationship with IT.
Hmm.
Because IT, they're the ones that are managing that process of scheduling those downloads to come in and
Hmm.
troubleshooting when a download doesn't go right and that kind of thing. So always helpful to have a really good relationship with those IT people as well.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Because again, you're right. They're working with it. We've got in BusPlanner alone, we've got 100, plus mapped student data fields that can already come into our system from whatever SIS you're working with, right? Whether it's Infinite Campus or Focus, Synergy,
Hmm.
Power School, right? All of them out there. And and then from that, if you still have something you want to bring in that we don't have a map field, we have an additional 30 custom data fields for students where you can bring in information. Think about the power of that.
I don't know of
Something
anybody
else.
that's used all those yet. Do you?
Yeah. No, no, not at all. Not at all. Something else I just thought about that really comes into play here, it is, in addition to the student data. What about if a district is opening a new school building, right? They may have to change some boundaries because the older building that they're replacing may not has been, as big student capacity. Maybe they're going through a bell time change study, right? The question is, was transportation involved on the front end of the process? How many times have you seen before where transportation is an afterthought, right?
Oh,
Just something.
absolutely. And I can tell you, Benford, some of these things would be if, we used to have district meetings, and I'm sure most districts have it this way. They have
Hmm.
principal meetings during the year about once a month. And
Hmm.
some of these things come up during the principals meeting. So bell time changes rarely go unnoticed because usually your board's got to approve them. And so you would at least be aware of them and hopefully have input to that process. The things maybe you don't see coming as readily may be special needs programs that are getting relocated. That's where
Right.
that, again, going back to those having that personal relationship with those different stakeholders will pay dividends because you definitely want to know if they're going to move, a program from one school to another. It's not just closing a school, which obviously is very important, but if you're moving a program, and I think special needs folks have been known to do that, and sometimes transportation is sort of left out in the cold, and trying to figure out, scrambling at the last minute how to make those changes when school starts up. And so I encourage folks to really have those meetings. Think about your calendar throughout the year. I mean, I think maybe you mentioned during a prior conversation of ours that it's really not just a one time a year deal. This is a 12-month planning process. You have to really have your calendar outlined for 12 months. And really, if you've never done it, I encourage you to take your calendar out and forget the year. Just go through and figure out what you do in January, February, March, April,
Hmm.
right on through the entire year. Because if you're like me, and I guess I was getting old, I would sometimes forget the importance of having a particular meeting with the CTE folks, for example, because they're going to
Hmm.
be adding a new program this summer, and the athletics folks, and I would forget those meetings. But the importance of going to those, I just needed a checklist, so to speak, to make sure I was on that every year. There's so much that comes in, so many different avenues, so many different stakeholders that need a part in this, that I think it's helpful to have that monthly checklist that you go down and make that happen.
Oh, most definitely. And now the speed of how programs are change. Sometimes they're changing 2 times a year. It's not just on an annual basis.
It'd be
It's
semester based,
continue
absolutely.
exactly. And it's so much in the industry is not it's just different, right? And I don't see it, going back to that slow pace that it once was, a few decades ago. So yeah, it's these are all just things again to make sure you've got worked through. You
Well,
brought
I
up.
think we,
Mhm.
we haven't mentioned is just the requirements by parents.
Oh yes.
The parent
Yeah.
communication and the parent requirements
Hmm.
now have
Right.
driven the amount of change I think that a lot of districts have gone through, along with growth, of course.
Right.
Growth obviously funnels into the progressive nature of how transportation's
Hmm.
had to react to different things, and so those two things are huge factors when it comes down to why changes have happened, and why I think we're never going back to what we once were.
Oh yeah. 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 For sure. You know, Stakeholders, right? We touched on this already. Talking about those data managers, right? You brought up the principals. There's so many out there on different levels, right? In the different schools in the central office. You brought up parents, very large stakeholder group here, right? It's not face-to-face meetings, as we've already established, is so pivotal to the success. But what about that ongoing relationship building?
Yep.
Right? Because again, at the end of the day, we all have to work with each other, right? It's, and from where you and have sat for so long, we've been on the operations side of it. We
Right.
see things through one lens. We don't see it through the lens that the principal sees it,
Right.
or that special needs director, right? Or the McKinney Vento, student service. It's just there's so many things out there. And that's why, again, building these relationships, very important.
But I think something else, Benford, that shines for me is that BusPlanner is able to help you with all
Hmm.
those communications. Provides
Hmm.
data you need. It provides you tools to be able to communicate directly with some of the stakeholders. And so that's where I think a lot of the power in BusPlanner lies, is that it
Hmm.
helps you with those communications.
It really does. It really does. And, you know, magnet programs, that's haven't been around, what, 10 years, 12 maybe, right? CTE. You mentioned this earlier about how it has just, morphed and grown into such a diverse, group in itself.
Well, a lot of these programs, Benford, like CTE, are offered only at a
Hmm.
particular location.
Right.
So if you don't
Right.
know going in that location is going to be a new location this year and have a new
Hmm.
program there, you may have to transfer kids once you get them to school, put them on a bus and transfer them to that location for maybe just an hour or two, and then bring them back to their regular campus because
Hmm.
that program's not offered anywhere else. That's one of the things we saw a lot that was happening, and we had to make allowances for that because obviously, if you're on a multi-tier system, then you've got a plan for that. It's going to affect the tiering of when your buses, how your buses are operating, and you got to allow for that additional run to be built in there somehow. So it's that's something that you definitely want to be planning on and meeting with these folks now versus waiting until closer to school to start.
Oh yeah, definitely. And because This happened to me not too long ago, before I got out, of being a TD, where they had moved some of the CTE programs around and neglected to, tell us at transportation. And so we literally had to scramble, 2 days before the first day of school, and luckily we were able to accommodate. But what if we wouldn't have been able to, right?
Yeah.
So again, it just goes back to the importance of, this continued dialogue, this relationship building, being a part of it. Everyone is so busy in transportation, right? You're dealing with what's right in front of you today, but you've got to take the time to, get out there and participate in these sessions with stakeholders, because if you don't, it's just going to make a tough road for you.
It'll make your life easier,
It will.
guaranteed.
Yes, sir. You are absolutely right about that. It will. So, regular school year's winding down, right? But now something that's an afterthought sometimes for people is the summer programs, right? And they're going to be kicking off here really quick. And so, you've got to work on that. It's not like last day of school, everybody get them home, bring the buses in and park them, and have an end of the year party, and we'll see you back in August. It doesn't work that
I
way.
do remember that though. I do remember when that used to happen.
Yeah, yeah. So you're telling our age, man.
I am. I am.
But I remember too. But it's ongoing. So, I think this is something else that people sometimes don't put enough value into on the front end. And it does kind of put some anxiety there to a degree to get it to happen.
Binford for years,
Mhm,
and I remember this very well. We would get the listing from our testing coordinators, and of course now it's not just a list once you have your original exams and your testing.
mhm.
You have makeup testing that has to be built in there as well because
Right.
they get a couple, three chances on that deal. And then you finally get the final list on the day before summer school starts, the Friday afternoon before summer school starts on Monday, and you're having to try to route buses to get that fixed. And then of course the routes are there Monday morning, but the drivers haven't done any dry runs. So it was just, you spent the first week of summer school trying to work out all the kinks. And I think
Mhm,
by deciding on which transportation model you're going to use, how you're going to structure your buses and how you're going to run those. Are you going to do a traditional model, or are you going to do some pre-planned routing of sorts? Right? We transitioned to that, and we actually had some pushback the first time we tried to do this from our summer school people, believing that students wouldn't come, that parents wouldn't make a way for their kids to get to existing bus stops because some were further away than the standard bus stop they were used to during the school year. And but the win, I think, in doing it that way, and we found out, by the way, that that wasn't true, that the kids did make it to those bus stops, and we didn't have any fall off at all in the number of kids attending. But if you have a pre-planned routing system, then you're just basically adding the students to those routes, and the drivers can know in advance, the parents can know in advance, and your routes run much smoother that first day of school than they would otherwise. That's just been my experience and how we dealt with it. Now, it may be a tough sell in some districts. Some folks may be already doing that, but I'd encourage you to, if you're not doing it, to look at it, because it can make your life not only easier, and we're not trying to make life easier for the sake of its job being easy. Transportation is not easy. It never has been. It never will be. But when you can make things better, I guess I would change that easy word to better. You can improve the way you deliver your service, and you can impact those lives of those kids, because really getting them there on time the first day of that summer school program is much better than getting there on time on the third day. I mean, because they only have like 10 days a lot of times for these programs anyway, 10 or 15 days. Every day counts for what they're trying to get these kids uh, to get them promoted and get them, educated in a way that would get them through that program, and see the result from that. So every day counts, and it's just really critical to me that you have a good plan going into summer school and how you're going to do that.
Oh, yeah. Well, you were talking about the testing, right? The retesting, regular school ending. I was speaking with a district week before last. Their last day is on a Thursday. The first day of summer session is Monday, 3 days
Yep.
later. So, and with, depending again on where you are, the testing calendar may be pushed back to, a week and a half before the end of school, or even a week. And then they got the retest one, retest two. So you may not be getting this information until the last day of school, or maybe it's the day after the last day, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And so for me, one of the things that I really, this is another, BusPlanner excels in so many places, but this is one where it really excels. When you are under the gun like that, and you get the students who are going to be in these summer programs, they're provided to you. You can literally, there's a tool that we have called Student ID Import. You can go in there if they give it to you, say on a shared spreadsheet or however they do it. You can literally copy and paste, whether it's 10, 1,000, doesn't matter to us. You just copy and paste however many student ID numbers, names, any of that. And then you literally paste it into this student ID import tool in BusPlanner, and it will instantly see all of the matches that are already in your system for those kids. And the ones that it can't match, it'll tell you those too. Think about just that one piece, okay? From there, we can then very quickly ascertain the stops those kids were on when school regular session was going on. Okay. So if you're going to have that traditional transportation model, as you called it, that's already built as well. But if you're going to go to like the community express stops you were mentioning, you can very easily make those. This for us, it took our summer school transportation planning that took the days in the week plus to do, like you were
Mm-hmm.
mentioning. We
Mm-hmm.
did
All
it
weekend.
we did it in a matter of about 2 to 3 hours. That's how quick it was.
I've seen our
So,
staff,
yeah,
Binford, literally work throughout the weekend
yeah,
to try to get everything ready to go for summer school, and still it wasn't really ready to go. It was, we made it happen, but it wasn't
hmm
the way it needed to be. And so if you
hmm
can have a tool that allows you to have things ready to roll that first day, that is very powerful.
very powerful. But now, with that being said, you still need to have the strict timelines, right? That are clear and concise for all your stakeholders, and hold everybody accountable. Because you can't, it's like you said, if you don't have everything out there in advance, you cannot properly prepare. Your staff can't prepare, drivers. So yeah, it's a lot that goes into it. Um, but yeah, so you go through summer school, and then it's regular school, right? So do we wait and do regular school start up when summer school ends? No,
No.
no, no. You hit the nail on the head. It's a 12-month cycle, right? So reflect back, Scott. Where did you start each year as you were, the current school year was in the last quarter pretty much, right? From spring break to the end, right? Um, where did you, how did you, get ready for that fall opening?
So, Benford, we would begin really after Christmas break.
Hmm.
We would start looking at any potential changes that were coming. The big changes pretty much you've already heard about or you're hearing about because again, a lot of those are voted on by your school board. So
Right.
so unless you got your head in the sand, you pretty much know some of those things are coming. But you also have to be running scenarios on some major changes. If you're flipping bell times, for example,
Hmm.
you're changing all your middle schools to a later start and high schools to earlier, or vice versa, then that may have a profound impact on exactly how you're going to better run and what the bell times need to look like and what needs to happen with that. So obviously you're spending lots of time on those types of issues, but I think you're also planning for other things. You're meeting with your special needs director about March or April to make sure you know what's coming for the next year, which programs are going to be located where. Are you thinking about moving anything around? And you're just it's a continuous process. I don't think you ever rest really. I mean, certainly the first quarter of the year is probably the least busy time necessarily for transportation. But if you're really looking at things the right way and you're planning properly, you're going to be spending your time during that period of time making sure that you have a plan for going forward and you know which month you're going to be doing what in. And that's a good time to be doing that planning, because when it starts, it starts and it snowballs on you. And if you don't have a good plan by then sometimes you can miss something. So
Oh,
I encourage
oh
people to
yeah.
start early.
Yeah, and I think also, just to piggyback off that, is to look at, what challenges did you face last school year, right?
Mm-hmm.
That were ongoing. What were just those items that continue to just, persist, that no matter what you did? Is there anything you can do different now, right?
Right.
So you don't have a repeat of that. I think that's very important, to reflect on, and work through. Um, Stakeholder engagement. Again, we've already been talking about that. It just can't emphasize how much that is. I think
And Denton,
also another.
I
Mhm,
would love to point out here too that, people love to use email.
mhm,
I was probably an email king because I used email a lot because it obviously documents the conversations that you have. But
mhm.
it's just not the same as engaging someone face to face.
Right,
If you've got a great relationship with someone and you're using email to help cover things and it's working well, that's fine. But I think you've got to do face to face communications, particularly with those folks that present opportunities for you. Everybody knows you're going to have a principal or two, or maybe more, that are special, and they're
mhm,
special in that they're either very high demand or they have a situation that just hasn't been resolved. We had a gentleman that was a principal at a early college program, and he was unhappy with the start time of his school. He felt like they were missing some class time because they were trying to align with the bell time that was at the college, at the little 2-year college they were at. And so the problem we had was because we were providing countywide transportation, there was no way the buses could arrive on schedule. We just couldn't get them there by the time he wanted to start. So we met with him over a period of time, starting in January, and said, look, what are the options that we have for the coming school year? Are you willing to allow us to maybe change the way we provide transportation? Can we go to more of a limited stop, a centralized stop plan where we could
mhm.
actually, buses could get there on time, but we're not making quite as many stops. And maybe we do that for the morning, but the afternoon we give your kids the home transportation because you're getting out last anyway, and we can go ahead and deliver those kids home in the afternoon. So if it gets dark, then we're putting those kids out a lot closer to their homes. And so that was a thing that we worked with them on, to have the group stops in the morning, but in the afternoon we had home stops. And it made him so happy because he could move his time back to the time he wanted. We could accommodate that through more efficient routing, and we still could provide them with the service they needed in the afternoon. So there's a way to do these kind of things. You have to go out and meet with these people and put everything on the table and just try to brainstorm with them. And you'll get friends for life when you do that. You'll get support for life in transportation when you do that, because these folks they're eager to solve their issue. And if you can work with them to try to figure out a way to do that, it may not be the way they thought it was going to be. It may not be home to home transportation in the morning, but it did help solve his issue, and everybody ended up being happy. Now, will you have a parent or two that's upset because they've got to drive their kid to a bus stop in the morning? Yeah, you'll have that. But at the same time, if your overall goal is to be able to improve the experience for the parent, for the school, for the principal, and you've done that through making those changes, then everything's not going to be perfect all the time. And we found a way to be able to get his support in dealing with the parents, so it made our job a little easier on that end, and all the other issues were addressed. So just one example of how, maybe you've got a different plan in the morning versus the afternoon. Sometimes you have to have that in order to make people, I say make them happy in order to meet their needs.
Right, right. And I think also another thing too is that no matter how well you plan for a school opening, always in the back of your mind be prepared for the unexpected, because it can very easily happen. and all of us that are on here that have been doing this a while, we face these from time and time again, right?
Yep.
And so, what I would used to always do was if even if it was only a fraction of a resource, I would always hold something back, right? And keep it in my back pocket so that if something did come up at the last minute, you were talking about with the early college program, right? I'm thinking of another one that I went through one time where they had to go in and they were retrofitting one of the schools, right? So some of the special needs programs that were in that school, in that wing, had been moved, relocated.
Hmm.
Okay. Um, and it wasn't that we were intentionally left, but it's something that happened. Okay. And so, but luckily we kept a few of the special needs resources back. So when that came up, we were able to, swiftly move in and drop them in, and be able to accommodate those classroom programs that got moved from their original school as being renovated to another one that was, 5, 6 miles down the road. So yeah, that's a big thing, I think for people. And I think the other thing too is perception, right? You set the bar. For 25 years that I opened up school years, okay, I can honestly say that there wasn't a year that went by that I didn't have butterflies in my
Oh, of
stomach on the
course.
first day, right?
Absolutely.
And again, I think that it's just inherent of the business. I used to always tell our teams that look at this as when you go to theater, the opening night of a production, right?
That's right.
It, you get one time. It's one day. You don't get do-overs. And yes, you're going to have the late buses. Yes, you're going to have the overcrowding. Yes, you're going to have the student who didn't get picked up or whatever. But if you have a good overall opening, that sets the tone within your school district, within your community of how you are going to be perceived as a service delivery operation on that very first day. You know, whether that's right, wrong, or indifferent, that's how
Yep.
it rolls. And so being prepared for that is and all those unknowns is going to just make it so much better, I feel like, to help people that are out there.
One of the things, Benford, we always used to struggle with on that, particularly the first day of school,
Hmm.
is it takes longer to load students on that first day.
Oh,
It's new for
yes.
everybody. The teachers aren't
Hmm.
really a lot of times the elementary kids, the teachers will walk them out to the bus and load them, and it just takes time to make sure everybody's on the right bus that first day. And then of course, if you're running a 3, 4 tier system, every minute you're late loading at one school affects the next school, right? So
Right.
so so you end up picking up, much later sometimes than what you prefer to pick up, just because you're trying to get everything right that first day. It's not even necessarily transportation and the drivers. It's as much the schools that are maybe struggling a little bit that first day, more than anybody else, just because they have to make sure they're getting kids on the right bus. Something we always just have to deal with. Kids that get on the wrong bus, what do you do with them?
Right.
So you run your route, you get to the end of the route, and you find out one kid on the bus is asleep, and they're on the wrong bus, right? And so now
Hmm.
you got a choice to make. Do you run that bus all the way back to where that kid's got to go, which is going to throw you way off schedule, or do you keep that kid on the bus and go to the next school and make arrangements for that kid to be picked up? How do you do that? What's going to be your district's plan for handling something like that? We always tried to look at it this way. I don't want to make a bus late for one kid. If I've got 65 kids waiting, I don't want a bus to be late for one. Okay. So we tried to have a plan in place where we could contact the parent, we could contact the school, and we would be able to either leave that kid on the bus and or the kid would get off at the next school and wait. Whatever works in your district as to how you want to do that is up to you. But having a plan for that, it's a lot better to make that bus be more on schedule than it is to have that one kid cause you to be literally an hour off schedule,
Hmm.
or more. Add that to the additional 20 minutes they had to load all the kids at the elementary school, and now you're an hour and 20 minutes behind on your second run. Because our elementary schools got out first in my last district, so that could literally make your one of your buses an hour and 20 minutes late getting to the school, and that's just on that first school. On the second school. The third school is automatically going to be behind because now you got to load them at that school.
Yeah. And the other thing too that I think sometimes people forget about is it's not, besides the loading and unloading at the individual school that slows down, if you've got these buses that are on multiple tiers
Right.
and they it's ingress and egress at each campus. It's gridlock. They can't even, they're already late and they pull up to the campus. They can't get there because you got the parent pickup line that's 2 miles down, they're running down the road, daycare van, it's everything. And so all of this is just feeding off of each other to really just exasperate the situation. So yeah, it's a lot, for sure. So how can BusPlanner help with school startup? Well, there's a lot of ways that we can help. For us, it's about a lot of things. Core route planning is one that starts off with it. As you guys are going through this and working, we have tools in our software. So one that's very powerful is what we call the student grade rollover manager. And so with this application, you can literally go in and whether it's your entire student district enrollment, or maybe it's just a feeder pattern of schools, or maybe it's just special needs kids, or just students that are rising sixth graders and rising ninth graders. Again, there's just all kinds of ways you can divide it up, but you can use this tool to go in and do promotions, right, based off of the policies and procedures that we have set up for your district. It can work off boundaries. It can work off of, where one school feeds into another. There's just different criteria. We can set it up to meet your needs. We can take it as far as removing their existing transportation. So for example, let's say it's a fifth grader, right? They're riding, bus 105. They're getting picked up at 702 at the stop of, at the end of their street. They're now going to middle school. So they can't ride on that same bus 105. They're going to be on a different bus. They're going to be picked up at a different time. They may or may not be at the same location, again, depending on how you have your stuff. So our system in this grade rollover can do the de-assignments. It can also reassign them for the next grade, next school. It's very powerful. And again, this will just take off, so much effort on your part. We used to do this. We would start this typically late January, mid-February at the latest on preliminary, and then we would work into it. Another way BusPlanner can really help you is that we can simultaneously feed student import files to multiple databases. So you can have it going into your existing school year production database. You can have it a different one going, or maybe it's the same one, going into your summer school. You can then have a third one going into your fall planning. Again, this is going to make sure things stay up on task, keep you going. Then when the final promotions are put in, the student information system is updated from one school year to another. That first import into BusPlanner, typically the grade rollover would get us about in the 95 percentile range. And then all we had to do was just promote, or I shouldn't say promote, adjust the remaining 5% that came through on that first student import after the official rollover occurred with the district. Again, it put us so far ahead of what we weren't able to do the other way. The next part is tracking student data. So when you talk about that, for example, look at what we're doing now with technology. In the old days, it used to be, who was assigned to ride the bus, who you thought was right. Now with student scanning, we're able to bring that into BusPlanner in real time. where you're then able to use that to make, educated decisions that you can stand behind with conviction of who is actually riding your buses because you're using that student ridership data. It's so powerful to be able to do that with our applications, and it's going to put you so far ahead. Communication. We've been talking all about it, but now we're going to talk about it some more because, again, with BusPlanner, it has so much that revolves around that. One being the subscriptions, right? Where you can have it set up for students, parents can receive information, schools can receive information. You can get it where your bus drivers can get it as you're making these decisions, okay? It is so powerful to be able to put that out there. One other one that is also important that we didn't mention earlier was the automated online form system that we have, right? That is going to be so powerful because with districts, especially since COVID, requiring parents to sign up for service, a lot of them are doing it on an annual basis. There are some that are doing it every semester. With this application, with our BusPlanner workflow, you can manage that in its entirety just through that system that then comes directly into BusPlanner, right, in your routing application. And so just think about that for a second. They put in the request for their student to ride. It comes in automatically. The system date timestamps it by the parent, the user ID. It can then send them automated communication and letting them know that you've received their information and you're working on it. Once your team has made the assignment, then it attaches them to the student the bus stop, the run, the route. It will then automatically communicate back to the parent, to the school, to the bus driver. Again, all these different stakeholders letting them know that they've been put onto the bus. It's so powerful in what it can do.
Yeah, Binford,
The last,
I'm sorry,
oh, you're
I had a
back.
technical
You're back.
glitch.
Well, we
I'm back
lost you.
here.
So, all
Yeah,
right.
I'm sorry about that.
Oh,
One
yeah.
of the things for Bus Planner for me that I really like is, you have fleet integrated with. It's not
Hmm.
just a routing software; it's a
Right.
total transportation management software system. So a lot of your fleet stuff can, scheduling your buses for going through the shop during the summer, that stuff. And I know people have fleet applications, but it's generally
Hmm.
not integrated with the same software that runs their routing platform. And I really like it because you can use it for that. The other thing you can use it for, if you've got drivers that are doing back to school training, we always
Hmm.
used to have a meeting every summer with our drivers. I'm sure everybody does, and we needed to record what type of training they received during that meeting, because inevitably we have a driver that might come up at some point in time, make a mistake, and well, nobody ever told me that. Well,
Hmm.
with Bus Planner, you can record and even attach attachments of things they signed, that they agree that they've actually reviewed. For example, an employee handbook. It might be certain types of training they may have had that you need to make sure you're keeping records of. I really like that because now you're not keeping it in a spreadsheet somewhere or in a different piece of software. It's right there in Bus Planner. You can
Hmm.
manage all the things you need to manage. You can manage in Bus Planner. So I really like Bus Planner from that perspective. It just makes it much more powerful tool for our users.
Oh, it really does. It's so powerful. And and the last part, um, that we have now that we've added in is going to be where you can actually, go in. And so as you have these last minute operational changes that come up, you can go in and with our Bus Planner Dispatch application and literally make those changes. You can move individual stops, whole runs from one assigned driver to another, okay, without affecting your routing system. This is done in real time. And when this occurs, it immediately pushes the updates to the drivers through their tablets and our BusPlanner Turns navigation app. It pushes it to our Chipmunk parent app so that they're notified. It sends out the updated email. There's so much you can do
Mm.
on the fly as a dispatch operations team, all through automation. So for us, we started out 40 years ago in routing in this, at Bus Planner. And now we literally have a total transportation system. It is an ecosystem that brings all facets. You mentioned, but the fleet maintenance, so powerful. The telematics that are coming in, the GPS integration with our GPS Plus, the student ridership, the pre and post. I mean, I could go on and on and on. Yes, routing is the nucleus of that, but it goes so far beyond. And that's again taking all of these different pieces and putting them together. That's what's going to give people a successful school rollover.
Binford,
It just you
one
can only
final
get.
thing that I got just that I thought of when I was trying to get back online. We hadn't talked about a whole lot, and maybe you mentioned this. If you did, I'm sorry for repeating it. But special needs equipment, you can keep up with special needs equipment inside Bus Planner, and that
Right.
equipment sometimes has expiration dates on it. If you have,
Mm-hmm.
you know, certain types of child seats that you may have installed in your buses may have an expiration date on those. So now's the time as you wrap up your school year to be going through and taking an inventory of all that equipment and ordering what you're going to need for next year
Mm-hmm.
so that you receive it in time. But guess what? If you're using Bus Planner, it can already tell you what you need to order for next year because you already
Exactly.
have that information entered into Bus Planner.
Yep.
So you don't need to do an annual inventory anymore to figure out what's going to expire and what's not going to expire, all that. You've got it tagged to a bus. So bus, 2105 has this number of this type of equipment, and it's two of those are going to expire. So you're going to go on there, find those two, take them out of
Mm-hmm.
service, and you've got to order those two to replace them. Again,
Oh yeah.
another example of how Bus Planner can help you with preparing for school to start, because you got to do it either way.
You're right.
You need to be doing
Mm-hmm.
that either way, but this can make your job so much easier because it keeps up with that for you.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. And that I'm glad you brought that point up because it's one that we do overlook sometimes, but it's so important. With going through that equipment. So everyone, again, we know everyone is so busy right now, especially with the end of the school year. But again, I want to thank the current Bus Planner customers that have joined us today. Thank you again for having us as your partner. Those of you that are out there that want to learn more, please reach out to us. We will gladly and want to talk to you some more and show you things that are out there and talk to others that are already in the Bus Planner family. That's how I learned years ago, and that's how a
Mm.
lot of people have learned over the years. It's just so much. And most of all, I just want to thank each and every one of you in the people transportation industry for what you do on a daily basis. As Scott's already mentioned, transportation is a tough job. It's not for the faint at heart, and those of us that are in it, we know how special it is. You cut me, I'm going to bleed yellow. I'm not going to bleed red. He's the same way, and those of you on the call, you know exactly what I mean when I say that. But just thank you for what you do